Kalalam Malak Yahweh, Wa Yahushai Bahashem, Rahak Wadash, and double honors to the elders of GMS Aruba, blessings unto those men, and blessings and salutations to the Akim out there in truth, pushing his word in all sincerity and in honesty. With that being said, Shalom Israel Barakatah. Today's lesson: sanctions will not stop the Russians. And here we have another RT.com article that says China calls out Western double standards on Russia sanctions. Most countries, including those in the EU, continue to trade with Moscow, the foreign ministry in Beijing has noted. Beijing has accused the European Union and its allies of double standards, following the latest wave of sanctions targeting Russia and Chinese companies allegedly linked to Moscow's military supply chains. And those sanctions placed upon the Russians will not stop them from fulfilling prophecy, and neither will it stop the Chinese from the reunification of Taiwan. That's why President Xi said on December 31st of 2024 that no one can stop China's reunification with Taiwan. And many have stressed that a full-scale invasion by China could lead to an electronic shutdown and an economical spiral not seen since the COVID-19 pandemic, that in turn could throw global markets into a tailspin. That's why Taiwan is so important, because right now Taiwan produces about 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductors, and by law the US is required to help Taiwan to defend itself if attacked. So the Chinese will also come up against the US. An inevitable third world war will come, and this is biblical prophecy. And you know that President Xi is looking to reunify Taiwan by force or by peace. But further reading says the EU's 17th sanctions package against Russia, adopted on Tuesday, targets what the bloc claims is the country's shadow fleet used for transporting crude oil. Several Chinese firms accused of supplying Moscow with drone parts and microelectronics were also included in the measures. The UK coordinated with Brussels, adding 18 vessels to its own blacklist. Responding to the measures, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning on Wednesday rejected the accusations and warned against disrupting the normal trade exchanges between the two countries. Those in Europe need to stop using double standards on trade and economic cooperation with Russia, Mao said. Most countries, including those in Europe and the US, continue to trade with Moscow, she added. So she's basically saying, who are you to talk when you are doing the same exact thing? The spokeswoman emphasized that China strictly regulates exports of dual-use goods and insisted that Beijing has not supplied any lethal weapons to parties involved in the Ukraine conflict. The new sanctions were announced shortly after a phone call between Russian President Vladimir Putin and US President Donald Trump, in which Trump reportedly warned that further sanctions might complicate efforts to reach a peaceful settlement in the Ukraine conflict. Delegations from Russia and Ukraine met last week for the first time since 2022 when Kyiv halted negotiations in favor of a military strategy reportedly encouraged by the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. On the same day the EU adopted its new sanctions, Beijing expressed support for the resumption of direct talks between Moscow and Kyiv. China also vowed to continue supporting efforts to resolve the crisis peacefully. And the prolonging of this Ukrainian war, along with those heavy imposed sanctions that they keep putting up upon Russia, will not make them any weaker. Those modern day Medes are chosen to fulfill the prophecy of the burning of modern day Babylon the Great with their destructive arrows. That's an inevitable prophecy. Even the 10 horns shall come up against her to burn her with fire. And the time cometh when the Russians will revert back to that old Soviet Union mentality. And in that greater war to come, they shall not regard silver, and as for gold, they shall not delight in it. Their only purpose shall be to burn Babylon the Great with fire, and Babylon the Great speaks of America. And what you people do not seem to understand is that you cannot upset prophecy, and you're looking to upset prophecy, but you cannot. This is the Lord's movie, and therefore, He is in charge. The Lord is the one that controls the steps of men. There's no free will. Proverbs 20 and 24. Man's goings are of the Lord. How then can a man understand his own way? Here we have that scripture of Isaiah chapter 13 and verse 17. Behold, I will stir up the Medes against them, which shall not regard silver, and as for gold, they shall not delight in it. And when the scriptures speak about the modern day Medes and Gog, that's in reference to the Russians. The Russians are those modern day Medes that shall not care for or be concerned about silver and gold. Their only purpose shall be to burn her with fire, to burn modern day Babylon the Great with fire. The Russians shall be stirred up along with the other nations to come up against Babylon the Great with their bows in that greater war to come. And there's no healing modern day Babylon the Great. She shall be utterly burned from coast to coast. The Medes shall make bright the arrows. That's also another scripture. So those sanctions will not stop the Russians. With that being said, let's go over to Jeremiah 51 and verse 11. Here we have Jeremiah 51 and 11. Make bright the arrows, gather the shields. The Lord Yahweh Bahashem Yahushua has raised up the spirit of the kings of the Medes for his devices against Babylon to destroy it, because it is the vengeance of the Lord, the vengeance of his temple. And the kings of the Medes are the Russians. The arrow represents a missile that is capable of carrying multiple warheads inside of that one missile alone, like the Russian Sarmat, aka the Satan II. Even the Carmanians shall rage in wrath and shall go forth as the wild boars of the wood, according to the scripture of 2 Ezra 15 and 30. The Carmanians of 2 Ezra 15 and 30 speaks of the Iranian wild boars of Iran. The Iranians of today are the Persians, and it is prophesied that they too shall come with great power. That's why they revealed their underground missile city. They too shall waste a portion of the land. So there's no healing Babylon the Great. The scripture of Jeremiah 50 and verse 9 has also said that the Lord will cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations from the north country. Russia itself is in the north. Even North Korea is itching to come up against them in war. On that day, the nations and the stirred up kings of the Medes, which are the Russians, the captains and the rulers thereof, shall come up against Babylon the Great to burn her with fire. This is all prophecy. Here's that scripture of Jeremiah 51 and 28. Prepare against her the nations with the kings of the Medes, the captains thereof, and all the rulers thereof, and all the land of his dominion. And on that day, the nations, along with the stirred up kings of the Medes, which are the Russians, the captains and the rulers thereof, shall come up against Babylon the Great to burn her with fire. And on that day, the nations, along with the stirred up kings of the Medes, which are the Russians, the captains and the rulers thereof, shall come up against Babylon the Great to burn her with fire. They will not regard silver or gold, and their only purpose shall be to burn her with fire. That's why the scripture of Isaiah chapter 13 verse 18 said, their bows also shall dash the young men to pieces, and they shall have no pity on the fruit of the womb. Their eyes shall not spare children. Right, those destructive detonations shall spare no one in their path, in their destructive path. The bow represents the silo, and the arrow represents the missile. And the movie Broken Arrow itself, with John Travolta and Christian Slater, showed you what the arrow was upon that movie. Jeremiah 51 and verse 29. And the land shall tremble in sorrow, for every purpose of the Lord, Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai, shall be performed against Babylon, to make the land of Babylon a desolation without an inhabitant. So the Lord's purpose is to remove modern-day Babylon from among power via the destructive arrows of the Russians and the other nations, with the arrows of the other nations as well. But the Lord himself shall return with those chariots of fire, those so-called spaceships, and they shall shoot forth their laser beams upon modern-day Babylon the Great as well. But when it comes to those sanctions, no sanctions against Russia will stop or deter them from fulfilling prophecy. Once they implement that CHIP of Revelation 13:16 through 18, that third world war cometh quickly, no holds barred. Plus, the Lord is also returning in vengeance for what they have done unto the true Israelites and unto this earth. Look at the current condition of this earth. That's why the scripture of Revelation 11 and 18 has said, and the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come, and the time of the dead that they should be judged, and that thou shouldest give reward unto thy servants the prophets, and to the saints of the Israelites, and them that fear thy name, small and great, and shouldest destroy them which destroy the earth. And the ones that are in charge of this earth is Edom. The earth has been given into the hands of the wicked. You see? And the nations were angry because they were also taken out of their comfort zone. But when it comes to those sanctions, that's not going to deter the Russians from fulfilling prophecy. But with that being said, Kal, Allah, Malak, Yahweh, Wa Yahushai, Bahashem, Rahak, Wadash, and double honors to the elders of GMS Ruel, blessings unto those men, and blessings and salutations to the Akim out there in truth, pushing his word in all sincerity and in honesty. With that being said, Shalom Israel, Barakatah.